Welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Wendy Leggett. She is a professional certified coach, owner of Conflux Retirement Coaching, specializes in non-financial retirement life planning, and with 25 years of corporate sales leadership experience, she guides clients through a fulfilling retirement transition, focusing on well-being, identity, feelings of purpose, connectedness, and positive aging. Welcome to the show, Wendy.
Thank you so much. Great to be here. And wow, that's a mouthful, isn't it? There's a lot to unpack here.
You are welcome. Lots to unpack. You are welcome. Welcome to the show, Wendy. Welcome to India in this online form. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are going to talk right now. We'll be talking how one can master their retirement identity. But before about others' identity, let's understand how you build your identity, about your journey, about your background, so that people can learn from your journey, know more about the person they are listening to.
Oh, I appreciate that opportunity. Well, kind of reverse engineering and looking at where I've been and where I am now. Where I am now is really connecting with people that are in the same demographic as me. I'm of that traditional age that could be retiring, that baby boomer, Gen X demographic. And I've seen that people really have a struggle, which I think AJ is so shocking and such a surprise oftentimes, because it's like, hey, you're no longer working. Everything should be coming up roses, and that it's filled with leisure and travel and endless weekends. And so, and yet I was seeing people that were struggling, peers of mine, business associates of mine. And so I also felt that I was going through some transitions, and I'd like to share those. That for the bulk of my career, I was in sales leadership. So I worked for a number of different types of companies, from Fortune 50 to franchises to fashion. And I loved so many aspects of that work. I loved connecting with my clients. I loved meeting and achieving goals. And I loved elevating my team members' capabilities. And so it was just a beautiful package for me that continued for years and years, until I was in my last role as a sales leader, directing a number of franchises. And I really loved the people that I was working for. Very dynamic, very customer oriented, very team oriented. And we did amazing things, and we did very, very well. I think when you're doing something that you're committed to and it's aligned with your values, the rest tends to come. And that's what it was. And that was probably the kiss of death, because the company was doing so well that the owners decided it was time to sell the franchises. And so that's what they did. And I don't blame them, but the outcome of it was that here they brought in a new owner, came in and had a very, very different sensibility and very different set of values. And what ends up happening, and maybe a lot of your listeners can connect with this as well as yourself, is that when you're trying to bring your best self forward and it's being done in a way that's not resonant for you, that it feels like it's counter to who you are, it's a very difficult thing to face clients, difficult to face employees. And that's what was happening, is that the owner had a very different set of values than I. And so I, as many of us are, I tried to fix it. We get in there and problem solve and try to figure out a way. But at a point, it got to where, you know what, this is his company. I can't change things, but I'm changing myself, and not in a way that felt good to me. So I was at that crossroads that a number of then people who were retiring are at, where it's like, well, which way do I go? And for me, I decided, I could continue as a sales leader, but instead I want to dig deep and see how can I bring myself forward and still have this beautiful combination of connection and achieving goals and really elevating people's capabilities. So I went back to school, which in and of itself was a big change for me, and got my professional certified coach credential, and then dug deeper as I felt that, this retirement area is really very, very much needed and doesn't get the visibility, the non-financial piece. So I earned several additional credentials around that, as well as developing a positive mindset. So that brings us up to the current. I work with individuals, groups, and couples, helping them with this roadmap to retirement.
Absolutely, absolutely. Wendy, wonderful story. And you see, now you have done so much. You have done this professional certified coach. You have your own identity now. People look up to you. Earlier, it was another just one more job. Obviously, people love their job, but having their own identity beyond the job is it has its own meaning and satisfaction. And that is where I want to
Yes.
understand from you about people talk about this retirement, and when they talk about that, certain myths have also come up. So help us understand these retirement myths that are, I don't know whether they are good or bad, but you will be able to tell us about few of the retirement myths that are prevalent in your part of the world, maybe also in my part of the world.
Yes, and you're sharing retirement needs. Is that what you're speaking?
Myths.
Needs. Yeah. So, so far as in retirement in the U.S., it really is an individual decision as well as a corporate decision. So the typical age to retire is kind of around 65, 66. That was really based on Social Security, which happened, back in the 30s when people were really working in the fields, working in the factories, and they were tired. And so it was important then that they'd be able to leave the workplace but still be sustained. And so the government stepped in with Social Security, and the model was really that people would maybe live for a couple more years and then they would expire. So it went from retire to expire pretty rapidly. But we know that that is way in our past, and really that term retire should be retired. And I think that's a global sensibility, because it's not a matter of us then no longer searching for that meaning or having that strong sense of identity that you spoke to. It's this idea that we have maybe 20 or 30 years ahead of us, a third of our life, hopefully, if we're mindful about our health and our mental health as well as physical health. And so that's where it's important that we look beyond the finances, which is what the focus tends to be, and seeing what are those needs and what are we really wanting to accomplish beyond. So how does that connect for your experience, AJ, and your thoughts?
Right, right. Wonderful, wonderful, Wendy. And I'm sure a lot of, because of the advanced healthcare, medical care that is prevalent, people should not think about death until, until it actually comes. They prepare for the good death. They should wait for life, another day to live rather than another day to pass and meet, go towards the end of their life. This is not the way to look at life. And that is where your help is going to help a lot of people in terms of you talk about the key to a fulfilling retirement. Then what is the key to a fulfilling retirement? Is it only about money? Maybe just someone has a lot of money, good health, but will that be a good retirement for them? Help us understand then, how do you look at life in a wholesome manner when you are close to retirement or are about to retire or have recently retired?
Yes, well, I want to kind of give an analogy that if we think about, let's say we're in high school and we're going to be going to college. And so that's a major life transition, just like retirement is. But do we only look at the finances? Do we only look at the colleges that we can afford? Or do we also look at what course of study is it of interest to me? How does the campus feel? What do I envision for that connection with others? What's important to me? And so the same goes with any life transition, especially, but definitely including retirement, where if we don't look beyond the finances, then we're overlooking that we bring our whole selves into every one of these transitions and milestones. And so if we're not mindful about our mental well-being and our emotional well-being and our social connections and those feelings of purpose that are so vitally important to all human beings, and that not just that lifespan, but that health span that you touched upon, then we're leaving a lot of things to chance, and we're not really taking that ownership for our decisions and our next chapter. I talk about a retirement by design, not default. And I really invite and also challenge everyone to be thinking about what steps do I want to take in this runway to retirement so that I ensure that I am prepared for it, that I am mindful, and that I am intentional so that when I step into it, I'm acting in a way that really aligns with my values and my interests and my capabilities.
Right, right. So help us understand then what are the common challenges people face in retirement? Is it much more about finances, or is it much more about emotional things? People also think about emptiness. So does it impact men and women differently, individually or as a couple also?
Yes, yeah, several areas to touch upon there. First and foremost, I think is our mindset. Are we coming into retirement, for example, but any transition with that fixed mindset where we think that we're not capable of broadening our capabilities, that we're kind of fixed in what we know and what we are capable of, or a growth mindset where we're open to the possibilities and we recognize that failure, quote unquote, is learning and that we can constantly kind of push things forward a little bit and test the waters and see what feels good to us. So, perspective is really, I think, one of the most important underpinnings of a successful retirement. Are we looking at it from a framework of loss and lack, or are we looking at it from a framework of abundance and opportunity? Are we seeing the obstacles or the opportunities? Are we seeing the pitfalls or the possibilities? So our mindset is very important. And as we move from our career into retirement, really recognizing the power of that transition, that we're making that external change. Yes, we're no longer a career person. Now we're quote unquote a retiree. But there's this internal change that takes place as well. And there's a lot of research that shares with us that in order to really move through a transition in a powerful and connected way, we really start with the ending. We think about, what needs closure and what do I want to bring with me into this next chapter and what do I want to leave behind? Because we can be on autopilot. We can have patterns and habits that have served us or not served us. And now we have an opportunity to clean out the cupboards and really see what we don't want to bring with us. And also recognize all the skills, capabilities, passions that we have. So we're not starting over. This is a new chapter in our life's book. It's not a whole new book. So we have a lot that we can bring with us. But we start with that ending rather than jumping right into the beginning, because some of my clients come with that busyness factor. They have a full dance card. They're filling up their time, but it's not fulfilling time. And we saw that so many people ended up going back to work, that big unretirement. And I think for some, not all, but for some, I think it's because they didn't have a vision of what could be next and what they wanted for themselves. They just moved into the bucket lists and the to-do lists. And when those were all checked off or no longer of interest, then it kind of became Groundhog's Day. So we start with that ending. We go into a period that William Bridges, who's prolific around this work, then calls the neutral zone. It's also been called the messy middle, where we're feeling these emotions that so many of my clients come to before they retire, when they're retired, saying that I feel a sense of loss. Who am I now? Speaking about that identity, or I feel confused, or I feel stuck, or I really am in denial that I'm getting older. I'm feeling invisible. So all of those and other emotions come up. So it's important that we give those feelings space and grace and attention. And that's where a coach can be, I think, especially supportive and helpful, because so many of us, especially in the demographic that's closer to retirement, don't put a lot of stock around emotions. We were taught to no pain, no gain, push through and push those emotions aside or push them down. But we know that our emotions are signals for us. They're telling us, hey, this needs a little more attention. They're not good or bad. They're just feelings that we have. And so if we lean into those feelings in this neutral zone that Bridges speaks about, we can start to make discoveries about what feels right to me, what does feel in alignment with my values, what does feel purposeful to me, before we then go into that third phase that Bridges speaks of, which is the new beginning. But again, so often people are so anticipatory or so excited to get into that next chapter, they just jump in and they fill up their dance card. They full on commit to volunteer work or taking care of grandkids or starting a business instead of taking it one step at a time. And we know that oftentimes to achieve an outcome, just taking that smallest step toward it is the way that we can incrementally journey in a very powerful way.
Absolutely, absolutely, Wendy. You put it very well. People are filling time and not having a fulfilling time. That's the very well you put it. So, is it about identity? People generally are fearful. They have lived with one identity or the other in terms of job, in terms of whatever they are doing, and suddenly they think that that identity is gone, and their whole perspective or people, as you talked about, they're feeling more and more invisible. Why do you have to feel invisible when you are very much visible to the world and to yourself? You see yourself every day in the mirror. How can you become invisible so easily? At least you should know about that fact for yourself. Why does it happen? How should people then detach themselves from the identity of their jobs, identity of their title? And why should I work for a career? I begin a career just because so that people find me visible. Why can't I just decide for myself and do things that, as you said, one thing at a time? How does one do that? Is there an easy way to do it?
Well, I think the easy way, but it's actually hard, but easily said, is to be the CEO of you, to be the leader of you. You know, when we're in career, whether we own our own business or we're working for someone, we we are still filling a certain role, and we're being either led by our clients' needs or we're being led by somebody who is our employer. And so when we move into retirement, we get to call the shots if we step into it, if we take this retirement by design, not default, and we take the ownership for decisions and we take the accountability. So the easiest way for me to sum it up is to be the CEO of you and to recognize that, yes, you identified yourself in a certain career. But if you stay interwoven with that, then you're doing yourself a disservice because you're kind of carrying it as a weight with you then into that retirement. So instead, let's leave that baggage behind and say, open up the bag and say, what of this do I want to bring with me? What are those skills and capabilities that allowed me to be so successful or fulfilled in the work that I did? And I want to bring it into retirement, but maybe in a very different way. So maybe if we were really detail oriented, then maybe we want to bring that in and be part of a board for a nonprofit. If we were very empathetic to people and very supportive of people, maybe we want to bring that into some volunteer work or taking care of grandkids. I mean, the list goes on, and that's not for me to really dictate for people, but I do go through exercises with clients to kind of flesh that out and bring it to the surface and say, when you were young, what got you really excited? And if nobody cared what you were doing, what would be some of those things that you would do, if you had the freedom to do that? We go through a lot of those exercises. We go through what is important to you, what are your values? And then also this feeling of what feels purposeful. And I want to touch upon that too, because I think it goes hand in hand with identity, AJ. And that is that I think that find your purpose feels like the holy grail. It can feel like it's so overwhelming to people that it's a showstopper. So instead, if we can just reframe it a little and say, instead of finding that one purpose, let's feel purposeful. Let's have it purpose with a capital P or a lowercase p, but find those little glimmers of purpose and weave them into our lives so that it's really a verb. It's not a static purpose, but instead feeling purposeful. And all of these can allow us then to start to really build out that sense of identity and see what are our gifts, what feels right to us, because we know that if we springboard off of what feels right to us, it can benefit those that we love and those in our community and those in the world. So it starts with that. It starts with our values, aligning those values to our actions, which then can develop into purpose and develop into a motivation to continue to act.
Absolutely. There is much to learn about these things from you. And so let's learn a bit from your book, which you have co-authored, The Retirement Collective. What is this book all about? Help us understand, who is this book for? Is it only for retired people, or is it people for everyone can read it?
Oh, thank you so much. Well, I think you bring up a good point that, we're talking about retirement, but really at any age or life stage, what I'm raising the awareness around, I think, is just having them that runway to retirement, so that it's not that one day you're in and the next day you're out. So even if you're in your 20s or 30s, that word retirement still is in the horizon for everyone. It just is. It's in our vocabulary. And so understanding then that it's not about just being on that track to be making a lot of money so you can retire, but instead what allows you to live well. And so I think that that's important. And so the book itself is a collection of a number of us retirement coaches. I'm in the Retirement Coaches Association along with my credentials, and we're really trying to raise the visibility of life post-career, and really supporting people in bringing their best selves forward. So this book does cite a number of those kind of issues and challenges and opportunities that people pre-retirement and then post-retirement feel. And the chapter that I wrote is around emotions and uncovering those hidden thoughts and feelings. I feel as though this is a really pivotal area that gets very overlooked. And yet we know that our feelings inform our thoughts, inform our beliefs, and inform our actions. So if we can really start with, how do I feel about this? How am I feeling about retirement? Does it fit for me? How do I define it? What do I want to see for myself and those that I love in this next chapter? And so then recognizing, okay, then what's coming up for us, and how might we move forward in a way that allows us to be the leader of ourselves, the CEO of you. So
Wonderful.
Wonderful.
Be the
Be the
leader
leader.
of yourself. There is so much to, as I said, there is so much to learn from you about these things, Wendy. And I'm sure a lot of people would want to know more about this, more from you, also about your book, and perhaps get your coaching also as a professional certified coach. So, what is the best way for them to connect with you, Wendy?
thank you. Well, I think in the show notes, you're going to be including a link
Yes.
to a mini workbook, a retirement readiness workbook. And so I invite everyone that's listening to request that. And there are a number of exercises in it. These are times for you to have that space and grace and really try to key in on what you envision for yourself in retirement, because we know that if we're planful, and I know that that can feel counterintuitive to the retiring, but we tend to want some kind of vision and structure. In order to get where we want to go, we have to know where we're going. So that's what this little retirement workbook allows for. There's a lot of exercises in there. So I invite your listeners to request that. And then I offer a follow-up session. We can go over any of the things that you discovered, or any of the obstacles or opportunities that you're feeling. And from there, then, if you determine, listener, that you'd like to work further, then I would certainly welcome that opportunity. But that's a great way to connect. Also, the name of my company, as AJ shared at the beginning, is Conflux Retirement Coaching, and that's CONFLUX. So you can find me at my website, confluxretirementcoaching.com, also on LinkedIn, Wendy Leggett, and I'd love to connect.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Conflicts, retirement coaching. In fact, that special age is a confluence of so many possibilities. People can look at that from that perspective, and it will be a world full of possibilities, and you will no longer be invisible to anyone. You will be very much visible. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.